Mary got married quite early. Her husband was a harsh man and often drank. Both Mary and her husband wanted a child, but they were having trouble conceiving. It had been about 2 years since their wedding day, and Mary still wasn't pregnant. This took a toll on her morale. Mary desired nothing more than to have a baby. At some point, it became her top priority. She couldn't think of anything else but her problem. Adding to her distress was the fact that her husband was always dissatisfied with her. Not only did he seize every opportunity to hurt her, but he also complained to his friends, who then bombarded Mary with their advice and foolish reproaches. "I think your problem lies with you. When was the last time you visited a doctor?" Sarah asked with feigned concern, coming to visit Johnson uninvited. "Last week." "I understand you're worried about your friend, but your questions are inappropriate. We're not friends, so I'm not inclined to discuss this topic with you," Mary tried to say calmly, but traces of irritation were still evident in her voice. Her interlocutor cast a disdainful glance at Mary, snorted, and left the room. That same evening, Mary had a heated argument with her husband. She was hurt by the fact that Gregory was siding with his friend in this situation rather than with his lawful wife. During the conflict, the man said that unlike Mary, Sarah could at least give a child to her husband. This remark, which slipped from the young man's lips, accidentally broke Mary's heart. She already felt defective, and after Gregory's words, she completely lost hope that anything would change. The man had no intention of apologizing to his wife. He was not interested in her grievances. They distracted Johnson from the alcoholic drinks he had turned to with even greater force. Meanwhile, Mary tried to come to terms with her helplessness. She was in despair for some time, but soon she came to her senses and decided to take more thorough care of her health. All her free time from work she spent in various doctors' offices. Johnson underwent a bunch of tests, but no deviations were found. Years passed. At 38, the woman no longer hoped for a miracle. She had long since divorced her husband. He practically drank himself to death right after their separation. Mary had many suitors in her life after that, but she didn't care. She didn't want serious relationships because she knew that almost all relationships ended with the birth of children, which, as the woman believed, she was not destined to have. Everything changed dramatically after Mary spent an evening with her longtime admirer, who lived in another city and visited so rarely that the woman had forgotten what he looked like. That day, the man told her that he could no longer communicate with her because he was marrying the daughter of a wealthy man and moving with her to another country. Did it upset Mary? No, rather it surprised her. To be honest, that admirer was far from the smartest and most attractive man. But what was remarkable was not that, it was that Mary began to notice strange things about her body. She felt that something had changed, but couldn't understand what exactly. To get to the bottom of this, the woman went to see a doctor. She was sent to a gynecologist last, so Mary was tired and didn't expect anything but a routine examination. She couldn't come to her senses for a long time after learning the news of her pregnancy. Of course, for many years, Mary had dreamed of a baby, but that was before when she was young. To be honest, Mary was just scared. She had already given up hope that her cherished dream would ever come true, so she was completely unprepared for such a turn of events. It was only a day later that Mary came to her senses and realized the seriousness of the situation. Her joy overflowed. It seemed that the woman could explode at any moment and share it with the whole world. For the first time, she cried from absolute happiness. Pregnancy wasn't too easy. After all, her age made itself felt. However, Mary didn't complain. She had been waiting for this event for many years. So, the woman felt that she had no right to dissipate it. Mary enjoyed her condition thoroughly. She meticulously prepared for the birth of the baby, even though she didn't have much money. "Aren't you afraid of giving birth? Won't it hurt?" "You're still young," asked the woman's neighbor. "You speak as if I'm an old lady." "I'm not even 40 yet, Mrs. Margaret," the woman replied with a smile, eager to leave the elevator as soon as possible. "Well, I must be pretty young then, huh?" Grandma gave Mary a stern look. "Just so you know, I won't tolerate any baby cries at night. And I highly recommend you to keep a close eye on the child, because I can activate some special organs. Clear?" Mary suppressed a laugh and managed to force out only a condescending smile. It was amusing for her to watch the old lady. Even then she knew that the neighbor would bother her in every possible way. There had long been rumors that she couldn't stand children. Matthew was born early in the morning. That morning became the happiest moment of Mary's life. The boy was an incredibly calm child. He slept almost all the time, but Mary was sure that her baby would grow up to be very brave and selfless. This thought warmed her soul on the most difficult days, when motherhood seemed not so wonderful. Mary was right. From an early age, the boy showed qualities that are inherent in real men. Mary raised the child alone, but she knew that soon Matthew would become her support and pillar. The boy himself also understood that he should help his mom, support her in everything. He was generally eager to help not only his family, he felt that his duty was to protect the weak and helpless. That's why the boy dreamed of becoming a rescuer or a doctor. Mary approved of her son's passion. Time passed. The boy grew up, and he was called up to the army. It was a very difficult time for his mom. She waited for him day and night, and finally, she got what she had been waiting for. But that was not the end of the ordeal. Matthew was home for a very short time, and it was not the calmest time in the country. Matthew decided to enlist under contract, and not just anywhere, but straight to the war. They paid good money there. And no matter how his mom tried to dissuade him, it was all in vain. "How will I live without him, huh?" the woman cried, unable to stop. Betty, who was sitting next to her neighbor, didn't know what to say in such situations. She was afraid to choose the wrong method of consolation and ruin everything for good. "Don't torment yourself like that. Your heart will ache again now." The woman looked at Mary's tearful face and sighed heavily. "It's easy for you to say, your son isn't going to war." A new wave of tears engulfed her again. "Matthew, a smart boy, will cope with all the trials. You'll see. Stop crying already. He probably hasn't even left the city yet, and you're sitting here crying over him." "That's not right." Betty hugged her neighbor by the shoulders. "You don't understand. My little boy has gone off to fight. Why couldn't he just stay home and work as a programmer or something? But no, he had to risk his life. Oh, he'll be the death of me." Mary tried to wipe away the tears, but it was pointless, as she couldn't stop crying. "It's his path. You have no right to judge him. It was clear from the start that Matthew would choose such work. He's brave, and you shouldn't treat him like a little child. He's already a grown man, he'll take care of himself, and I have no doubt about that." The woman honestly replied, praying to all the gods that her children wouldn't choose such a path for themselves. "Yes, I understand that Matthew should make his own decisions, but not these ones." Mary stepped away from her neighbor and buried her head in her hands. The day of Matthew's departure became the worst day for Mary. All subsequent days were similar to each other. The woman cried for hours, ate very little, and hardly spoke to anyone. It was hard for her to come to terms with the fact that her boy really decided to go to war. Before, she hoped that he would become a doctor, a lawyer, or even a policeman. She liked these professions because they commanded respect. Undoubtedly, soldiers were also respected people for Mary. But this line of work also filled the woman with dread. She was afraid to imagine what was happening in the territories where military operations were taking place. Worst of all was the realization that her son had become part of the nightmare. "Oh, Mrs. Mary, how are you? How's Matthew? Have you heard anything?" One day, a former classmate of her son asked. "Good evening, Nancy. Matthew seems to be okay. We don't get to talk to him often, you know, given the situation. We've only talked twice during this time, and that's just for about 5 minutes." Mary replied sadly. "Well, he sure surprised us, didn't he? We planned to study together, but look how everything turned out. But it's Matthew, after all. We should have expected this from him. He's always been a brave one. Mrs. Mary, you raised him very well. There wasn't a boy in our class nicer than Matthew. The kindest and fairest. It's tough for you right now, but don't worry too much. Everything will be fine with him. It can't be any other way." The girl smiled. "Thank you, dear. I hope you're right, like everyone else. And how's your health?" Nancy asked sincerely. "Not very good. I'm not at an age where I can get nervous without any consequences. Sometimes my blood pressure spikes, sometimes my heart flutters. I don't have the strength anymore, but when my son comes home, it'll be easier." The woman smiled sadly. "He'll definitely come home soon. Send him my regards whenever you can. Tell him to come visit when he arrives. I'll be waiting for him." The girl hugged Mary goodbye and went about her business. The woman watched her leaving and wondered what her son was doing right now. Lately, she couldn't think of anything else. Mary really wanted to close her eyes and find herself in a happy future where her child was already home. When she got home, she immediately called the man who provided her with some news from the front. She was too old to understand technology, so it was easier to just talk to someone who understood it all. The man didn't pick up the phone right away. He didn't say much, so the woman became even more upset. She probably would have sat in despair if it hadn't been for her neighbor who brought her a baked chicken. Betty came by again. "You were just here yesterday." Mary grumbled at being interrupted in her self-pity. "Say thank you that I visit you so often. I brought you something to eat. Something tells me you're hungry again." Betty handed the container to her neighbor. "I don't need you to bring me food. I have hands. I can cook for myself. Come in, let's have some tea." Mary mumbled. "Thank you, that's very kind of you. Your face is tear-stained again. Aren't you tired yet?" Betty entered the apartment. "Oh, let's skip the lectures, okay? I can handle my emotions myself," the woman snapped. "Oh, who's arguing?" The neighbor sat on the couch. "Just understand this, shedding tears won't help Matthew. Mary, you know how people feel about him here. Everyone loves him like their own, such a kind-hearted person. We're all worried about him. After all, he's not a stranger to us. Of course, you're worried the most, he's your son. But how can we help or support him if we keep shedding tears? I somehow feel that Matthew will only be upset if he finds out about your suffering." The woman put her hand on top of Mary's hand. "Yes, I understand all that perfectly, but I can't come to terms with the thought. Matthew has always been by my side, helping, supporting. I can't see him as an adult. He'll always be a little boy to me. And how can I live with the thought that my boy is risking his life so much right now? If something happens to him, I won't even know right away. Maybe it already happened. And here I am speculating about what will happen when he returns. Mary's eyes welled up with tears again. But that's enough. Stop crying. You'll make yourself sick again, and I'll have to revive you. If you keep getting so nervous, you won't even see your son at all. Is that what you're aiming for? You want to leave your son an orphan, huh? Calm down. The main thing is to believe that everything will be fine with your son. Thoughts are material. Talks with Mary didn't work. She continued to be nervous, worrying about Matthew. She hadn't heard his voice in a long time, and it weighed heavily on her. She just wanted him to come home and never leave again. Sometimes it seemed to her that after Matthew went off to war, her life simply stopped and froze. Each new day was similar to the last. Mary stopped feeling alive, she just existed. Her only purpose was to wait for her son. She had no other goals or dreams. Many old acquaintances avoided her. They couldn't talk to her because she managed to spoil their mood every time with her depressive thoughts. Only a few neighbors remained by her side, sharing her concerns for Matthew. They tried to support Mary. But she didn't need that support. It was easier for her to deal with her grief alone. She didn't like crying in front of people, although lately she had been doing it quite often. It was hard for Mary to be at home. Every corner reminded her of her son, who wasn't due to return anytime soon. She waited for him more than anything else in the world. She didn't know the exact date when her son would return. She couldn't even estimate it in her head. Mary counted the days until she could embrace her child again. She spent whole days looking at family photos, examining Matthew's drawings. It helped her return to the time when her son was still with her. Every new day, Mary started by checking her phone and email. She always kept her mobile phone with her, hoping that her son would find the time and opportunity to call her, even for just a couple of minutes. She just wanted to hear his voice. It was always calm, soothing. Only Matthew could calm his mother, but circumstances prevented him from getting in touch with her. Maybe I should try writing him a letter? Mary asked Betty as they left the grocery store. If you have the opportunity, then write. I don't think he'll mind. The woman replied honestly and carefully examined the receipt. But I don't know how to do it. The last time I sent letters was many years ago. Everything must have changed since then, right? Oh, I can't tell you. I haven't sent letters myself in 100 years. I asked my daughter, and she's constantly sending something to someone. All right, you can tell me later. The rest of the way, the neighbors walked in silence. Neither of them was in the mood for conversation. By that time, Mary had already started to pull herself together. She stopped crying all day, stopped getting on her own nerves. She approached everything more calmly and rationally. The neighbors no longer had to cook for her or visit her every few hours. Mary became just an ordinary elderly woman, waiting for her son. This situation significantly eased her life. All the neighbors noticed the improvement. The woman stopped being pale, the bags under her eyes disappeared, she returned to her original weight, and began to smile sincerely again. Mary realized that Betty had been right all along. Her tears wouldn't help Matthew in war in any way. By suffering, she was undermining her already fragile health. Now Mary continued to move on with her life. Of course, she still waited eagerly to be able to contact her son at last. But now her life didn't revolve solely around this issue. She sincerely believed in her son and his strength. She accepted the situation. Now, instead of a constant stream of tears, Mary switched to searching for different recipes. Naturally, she saved the best recipes to prepare them later when her son returned from war. Then the woman took up repairs. She saved her pension and then used that money to buy various materials. Naturally, the first thing she repaired was Matthew's room, so that when he returned, he could sleep in a comfortable bed in a beautiful room. All these activities somehow helped Mary get back into the usual routine. She simply didn't have time for pessimistic thoughts. It was just an ordinary day that began with an argument. There was no hot water in the house again, which upset the residents. In the morning, almost everyone wanted to take a peaceful warm shower, not freeze under icy water. The tenants argued with the management, with the workers, and even managed to quarrel with each other a little. Mary was bored watching this. She never liked shouting and disputes. It was easier for her to walk past and not get involved in silly conflicts. After 5 minutes in the corridor, she couldn't bear the surge of negativity and went back to her apartment. Already at the doorstep, she heard the ringtone and rushed to the phone. The number was not saved. This gave the woman hope that her son had managed to find the time and opportunity to share news about himself. Mary was so overwhelmed with emotions that for some time she couldn't press the right button on the phone screen properly. When she finally did, the woman initiated the conversation. "Son, is that you? How happy I am to hear your call, you can't even imagine." In Mary's voice, there was genuine happiness that completely filled her. "Mrs. Mary?" A cold, indifferent voice was heard on the other end of the line, which didn't bode well. "Yes." "Who is this?" the woman asked. "I regret to inform you. Your son has died. He died heroically. He will be posthumously awarded. I sincerely sympathize with you." These words turned Mary's world upside down. The woman wasn't sure if she could stand, so she sat down on the table and started listening further. Mary simply didn't understand what was happening around her. There was only a deafening noise in her ears that drowned out all thoughts. To be honest, she simply didn't hear half of what was said. And she didn't want to, honestly. Her hand started shaking again, her eyes preparing for a new fit of hysteria. Mary was afraid to imagine what would happen to her when the phone call ended. She felt like she would just drop dead herself. "Mrs. Mary, I sincerely sympathize with you once again. Matthew will be brought home in 2 days. We'll handle everything ourselves." The man hung up. Mary instantly dropped the phone from her hands. It was as if time had stopped. She felt nothing, just stood there and didn't understand how to react. Then pain gripped her heart, and, clutching her chest, the woman fell to the floor. She regained consciousness several hours later when a neighbor came to talk about something. Seeing Mary, she immediately rushed to her. "Mary, don't move. I'll call an ambulance right now." "No need for an ambulance. Matthew is dead." Betty's lips trembled. It was the worst news she never wanted to hear. "How did he die? How did you even come to think of that?" "They just called me and said the funeral will be in a couple of days. He'll come home in a zinc coffin." Mary whispered quietly. Betty looked at Mary and realized that a hysterical outburst was imminent. The woman's eyes filled with tears. But no, Mary just cried and stared into space. She said nothing and didn't pay attention to what was happening around her. In the meantime, Betty ran to the room. From there she returned with valerian drops. She tried to get Mary to drink them, but Mary didn't hear her. "He left me, and now I'm alone," the woman repeated. "Mary, you need to go to the hospital. I'll call an ambulance now, and everything will be fine." "No, Betty, you go home. Everything is fine, I just need to be alone." "I won't leave you, don't even try to convince me." All evening, Betty sat next to Mary. She looked at the woman, not recognizing her at all. For several hours, Mary sat on the floor. She cried, starting to realize that her son was no longer there. And I did the repairs in his room. I wanted him to like it when he came back. Mary, stop talking like this. Your words scare me. I understand. I can't help you in this situation, but you must understand, your son died heroically, and we will soon learn all the details. I'm sure you will be proud of him. Proud, and always remember. To hell with this heroism, to hell with this pride. They will never bring my son back, do you hear me? Never. A new wave engulfed Mary. She got up and began to pace back and forth, uttering incomprehensible words that were only understandable to her. How dare they? How could they not protect my Matthew? I hate everyone. I hate everyone. War. I hate those who started. After a while, Mary finally took the sedative, sat down on the couch. Then she even asked Betty for a sleeping pill, realizing that she wouldn't sleep tonight. When the sleeping pill was taken, Mary asked Betty to leave. Supposedly she would be sleeping. Betty sadly looked at her neighbor and then finally left. Even the sleeping pill didn't help Mary sleep tonight. All night she cried into the pillow. Only by morning was she able to fall asleep. And the next morning started again with tears. She remembered what had happened. A few days later, Matthew was indeed brought back home. There were many people at the funeral, including his fellow soldiers. Mary was awarded a medal and thanked for her son. This only made her feel even worse. A medal? So, my son's life is worth just this medal, she suddenly said. Mary, please, don't start. There are a lot of people here, don't embarrass yourself, Mary tried to correct her. What embarrassment? My son is not coming back. They gave me a medal, thinking I'll forgive everything right away. Mary, you're talking nonsense. They clearly told you Matthew died saving his comrade. So, someone is still alive, but not my son, Mary said and slowly walked home from the cemetery. Betty, of course, ran after her. She couldn't leave Mary in such a state. Right now, Mary blamed the whole world. She was sure that this death could have been prevented, although she didn't know all the circumstances. Since Mary buried her son, her life has changed a lot. She returned to a state of eternal waiting. The woman hardly ate anything, couldn't sleep at night, constantly hoped for something. It seemed to her that what was happening now was just a dream. And one day she would wake up and realize that everything had changed. She still believed that Matthew was alive and would eventually come home. It was much easier for her. Since she lost Matthew, Mary had distanced herself. She distanced herself from everyone, neighbors, acquaintances, friends. Even Betty became someone who sometimes came to her apartment. She no longer shared her feelings with her, just remained silent. Betty really worried about her, even recommended seeing a doctor, because you couldn't live with such grief in your heart. You need to talk to a psychologist, maybe it will help. However, Mary didn't listen to anyone, she lived in some kind of imaginary world. Every day was like the previous one for her. Mary just waited for it all to end. Every weekend she went to the cemetery. There she talked to Matthew for hours, and it seemed to her that he even replied. So 6 months passed, during which Mary looked even worse. Wrinkles appeared, her hair turned as white as snow. Waking up early today, Mary slowly went to the kitchen. She made herself tea without sugar, sat down at the table. It was snowing outside. Today is Matthew's birthday. Mary sighed heavily, went to change clothes. She planned to go to the cemetery. On the way, buying 2 carnations, the lonely old woman slowly walked on the frozen ground. After entering the cemetery and laying the flowers at his grave, she sat on the bench, and tears flowed from her eyes again. She looked at the photograph, remembering when he was just a child, remembering how he dreamed of saving lives. It was very hard. But each time she went over in her mind the beautiful moments when Matthew was around. I miss you so much. You can't even imagine it. Every morning I wake up and think that everything could be different now. If you were here, I would probably be the happiest woman on earth. Mary wiped away a snowflake that stuck to the photograph on the monument. That's better. It seems to me like you're crying with me. She tried to smile, but it didn't work out well. Mary sat like this for several hours and then lay down on the wet snow and hugged the grave. Son, take me with you. I'm tired of being alone. I don't want to live on this earth anymore. I want to be with you. You know, I'm sure you miss me there too. So why should we torture ourselves like this? Suddenly, the old woman heard a strange rustle behind her, as if someone was walking on the freshly fallen snow. The woman got up from the cold ground and turned around. Behind her stood a tall girl with a little boy in her arms. Hello, the girl said quietly. Hello, the old woman replied. They looked at each other for a few seconds and just stayed silent. Mrs. Mary, I finally found you. How do you know my name? The old woman became slightly wary. Are you Matthew's mother? Yes, I don't understand who you are and how you know all this. My name is Agatha. I'm your deceased son's girlfriend. A girlfriend? And is this your grandson Jeremy? Right now, Mrs. Mary feels like the ground has been pulled from under her feet. She looked at this girl and didn't understand whether she could trust her or not. These words brought Mary back down to earth, and only now did she realize that if she really had a grandson, then there was a reason to live. She looked closely at Agatha and tried to understand whether she was lying or telling the truth. Various thoughts started swirling in her head, confusing her. Hold on a second, I'm a bit confused here. My son had a girlfriend? And you didn't know about it? He never talked about me? Mary shook her coat and sat down on the bench. Agatha sat down next to her. The child she had in her arms was asleep now. But Mrs. Mary was already trying to recognize familiar features in him, and it seemed to her that she succeeded. Let me tell you everything. Please do, because I don't understand anything at all. So, my family home was in the area where the fighting was going on. That's where I met Matthew. Honestly, our feelings flared up at a crazy speed, and just 2 months into the relationship, I got pregnant. Unfortunately, Matthew never got to meet his son. At that time, I was pregnant when they announced that Matthew was no more. You can't even imagine the depression I went through, how hard it was for me, and I just didn't want to see anyone. He didn't even live a month until his son was born. And then I tried to come to terms with what happened, but it just didn't work out. I knew he had a mother, but I couldn't bring myself to come to you. I thought this meeting would go completely differently. Agatha could have said more, but little Jeremy woke up and stared at Mary intently. Mrs. Mary, if you need any proof that this is Matthew's son, I'm ready. Want to do a test? I just want my son to have a grandmother. And you knew you had a grandson. And I understand very well that it's not easy for you now. No need for any test. Looking at the boy now, I see that he resembles my son. And I'm very glad. For the first time in a long time, Mrs. Mary smiled. She was amazed that she had a grandson, a complete copy of Matthew. Why are we sitting here freezing? Let's go home. I'll bake some pies for you. You must be tired from the road. So, Jeremy, let's go visit Grandma. Agatha, can I hold him? Mrs. Mary reached out with trembling hands to the baby. Yes, of course. The old woman took her grandson and hugged him. For the first time in her life, she felt such warmth in her soul. It even seemed to her that she had returned to her youth and was now holding a little Matthew in her arms. Feeling like she's returned to her youth, she smiled again. They slowly walked along the road, talking about how Agatha was happy with Matthew and how difficult it was there. I tried to dissuade him from going there, but he didn't listen to me. It turns out I didn't protect him. Not at all. You know, there are wise words. Everything happens for the best. By sacrificing his life, Matthew saved other kids, and he will now be remembered. And also, if you hadn't let him go, I would never have met him, and I would never have had such a wonderful son. The old woman looked at Agatha and realized that she was a very good girl. She always dreamed of such a daughter-in-law. Agatha, I'm so glad you came to me. I think now my life will make sense. Literally half an hour later, they were at Mary's home. Right now, Mary seemed to have rejuvenated by 20 years. She ran around the house quickly, kneaded dough, showed a photo album where Matthew was little, and at the same time tried to play with her grandson. She wasn't bothered by her heart or blood pressure, she was happy. Agatha, I was thinking. Maybe you'll stay with me, since you don't have any other relatives. Besides, your city isn't the best place on earth right now. I would be insanely happy if you stayed with me. Are you serious? Why not? You'll find a job, and I'll stay with Jeremy. Anyway, I'm retired. You know, this is a wonderful idea. So, it's settled. You'll be giving me a big gift. Mrs. Mary didn't cry anymore. She loved Agatha with all her heart and soul. And little Jeremy became Matthew number 2 for her. She was ready to do anything for this little boy. Gradually, life began to take on colors again. Grandma spent whole days with her grandson and tried not to think about anything bad. She really wanted Jeremy to grow up to be a good person. Grandma personally took him to daycare, picked him up, while Agatha worked. She managed to find a good job and started earning well. Even Betty noticed how Mary had changed with the arrival of new relatives and was very happy for her neighbor. Today, they were sitting together in the kitchen, drinking tea. Jeremy was still in daycare. So, are you going to pick up your grandson soon? Betty asked. Yes, I never thought this would happen. It didn't even seem possible when my son was no longer here. It turns out, your son left you a surprise. He just didn't have time to tell you about it. Yeah, with all the calls he made from there, of course, you can't tell everything. You know, the main thing is that everything is good now. Agatha is truly a wonderful girl, and I fully support my son's choice. I myself didn't expect him to find such a wonderful life partner. They chatted a bit more, then Mrs. Mary got up from the table and started getting ready to go to the daycare. She needed to pick up her grandson earlier. After all, they wanted to stop by the store to buy some collectible car, which he had been telling his grandma about for a whole week. Well, we need to go. If I'm late, the store will close, and Jeremy won't forgive me for that. Are you spoiling him too much? The neighbor asked. Children need to be spoiled, because you never know what adult life has in store for them. And I always blame myself for forbidding many things to Matthew in his childhood. Spoiling is necessary, but of course, in moderation. If tomorrow he asks me to buy some gift that costs more than my pension, of course, I'll refuse. You need to know the limits. But gifts like cars, yes, please, as many as he wants. If only you knew how much I love my grandson. Well, let's go. Otherwise, we really will be late.